Hey students, welcome to your first Solving the Parable video for the Joy Luck Club. So the Joy Luck Club has 4 parts to it, and at the beginning of each part there is a parable, and the parable offers a lesson that's going to be very important thematically to the chapters that follow. And so it's important to make sure you take the time to understand each parable before you dive into the following part, because it will give you clues as to what you should look for thematically in the overall lesson to that part. So if you're not quite sure what a parable is a brief, concise story, oftentimes anecdotal, that intends to teach a lesson, and it's generally an ethical lesson or a spiritual lesson. And a secondary definition is a short allegorical story designed to illustrate or teach some truth, religious principle, or moral lesson. And so this is the parable that starts off the Joy Luck Club, and I'm curious through this first parable, what theme does Amy Tan establish for part 1? What do you think? Now, I'm not going to read this parable out loud, so if you haven't read it yet, please go ahead and pause and go ahead and give it a read so that while I give the directions, you already have the parable in mind while I'm explaining. So go for it, pause, and give the parable a read. All right, so now that you've read the parable, let's talk about what you need to do. So, as I mentioned, there are 4 parts of the novel, and each begins with its own parable, and that parable establishes the theme of each part. And so there's a variety of themes that you'll find, and with each parable video, I'll kind of clue you in as to what themes you should look for. So in this piece, there are several themes, and the first one is expectation versus reality. So consider in here where we see the theme of expectation versus reality. Also, where do we see the theme of what's lost in translation, as well as the boundaries created by irreconcilable differences between Chinese and American culture. And last but not least, the lack of understanding between cultures and generations. So all 4 of these themes can be found in this parable. And some of these themes will be found in the other parables, and some of them only occur here. But we see these themes, and we know that since they're established in this parable, they're going to become very important to the chapters that follow. And also what's in the parable are a variety of different literary devices that Amy Tan uses. There's symbolism, there's irony, there's alliteration in there, there's juxtaposition, there's allusion and dialogue and repetition, and also a shift in tone. And to help you guys out with these, I've included a definition for each one and also the purpose of each one, because that will kind of help you understand why Amy Tan would use them. And so what you're expected to do for your assignment is explain what device you're going to focus on. You're going to explain how that device works in the parable. And then you're going to connect it to one of the themes and explain why Amy Tan has the theme that she has, as emphasized by the device. And so if you're confused, that's all right. We have a sample that should clarify everything, and then you'll be able to do your own. And so we have the what, the how, and the why. So for what, we have the first parable revolves around a mother leaving China for America so that she may provide a better future for her daughter. In this parable, Amy Tan emphasizes the woman's difficult journey in the very first sentence through alliteration. The old woman remembered a swan she had bought many years ago in Shanghai for a foolish sum. And so here, this identifies what the parable is about, what is being emphasized, the woman's difficult journey, what device we're going to use, and what quote we're going to focus on. There's a lot of what going on. And so when you write your own paragraph, I want for you to have the same amount of what's. What's going on, what's being emphasized, what device is being used, and what quote you're going to focus in on. And alliteration was chosen from this list of options. Now, since the example is using alliteration, when you go and write your own parable analysis, you need to choose a different literary device. You may not use alliteration because the sample does, but as you can see, there's plenty others to choose from. So next we go into the how. So now we're going to explain how the alliteration operates within the parable. The words swan, she, Shanghai, and some all begin with the same sound, as do later words in the passage such as sailed, stretching, speak, and swallow any sorrow. By emphasizing these words through sound repetition, Tan connects the woman swan to both the home of her past, Shanghai, and the potential of her future, the idea that her daughter will be able to swallow any sorrow. Therefore, the swan is clearly worth a great deal, or some, to the woman. This is why the taking of her swan is so devastating, as it is the taking of both her past memories and her future hopes. Therefore, she is unable to share her past, future, nor struggles with the daughter for which she has given up so much. So here's where the analysis occurs, where we explain how the alliteration is functioning. So first it clarifies using kind of the definition of alliteration, where you have words that start with the same sound, and it points out the actual words that start with the same sound. So it clearly defines kind of how the alliteration is working. But then it gets more into the complexities of alliteration and what's actually being emphasized. And so it points out that because of the specific words that are emphasized through alliteration, we see that the past and the future are both emphasized. And therefore, when the swan is taken away, she's lost a great sum because she's lost both this past and the future, which she needs in order to connect to her daughter. And since she's lost those things, she doesn't have a way to connect to her daughter. And so we have really good analysis going on here. Some students are going to want to stop here, where they just explain, okay, these words start with S, cool. But that's not enough analysis. You got to think about why. Why did she pick these specific words to start with the letter S? What's being emphasized? Then we go into the why, where we connect it to theme. Ultimately, this demonstrates the lack of understanding between cultures and generations. So this goes all the way back to this slide, where this sample writer has chosen this theme to focus on. So remember, you will choose a theme and you will choose a device. Now you want to choose wisely. You need to choose a device and match it to the correct theme. Not all of these devices create all of these themes. These devices will match some of the themes, but not all of them. So you got to make sure to match it up right. And so here, this sample writer says, ultimately, this demonstrates the lack of understanding between cultures and generations. The Chinese mother is unable to connect with her American daughter. Moreover, the American daughter is unable to appreciate the losses experienced by her mother. And so we have this really beautifully written analysis paragraph where we establish the what are we writing about. We establish how the device works to emphasize important meanings in the parable, and then why the author does this, how it connects to a very specific theme. And so you are going to do the same thing in your parable analysis, but you're going to do it for a different device, okay? So I'm really excited to see what you come up with. And remember, what you discover in this parable will help you know what to look for when you read part 1 of the novel. All right, good luck with your analysis. If you have any questions, make sure to ask me. You can ask me via email, GChat, or office hours. All right, bye. Good luck.